A presentation of serial killers. Podcast presentation on serial killers by Professor Eric Hickey mentions serial murders, serial killers, and victims. Professor Hickey conducted some research about the psychological, biological, and sociological reasons behind the issues of serial killers and their mental disorders. Professor Hickey conducted his research by studying and observing serial killers of over 400 murders with different backgrounds, for example, age, ethnicity, gender, and criminology. Most of the serial killers are profiled as sexual predators. The podcast also includes examining research by serial killers that can analyze cultural, historical, and religious factors that influence psychological, sociological, and physiological issues within serial killer profiling. Examples of serial killers. The topics related to what makes a serial killer is about debating whether what makes a serial killer, or are they born evil and decide to act upon how they choose to become serial killers in the first place. Examples of serial killers that Professor Hickey mentions is Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer. Jeffrey Dahmer was a necrophiliac, sociopath, sexual predator, and a cannibal, and he raped and killed 17 underage boys. Ted Bundy was a serial killer that the professor also mentioned in the podcast, was an adult male who kidnapped, raped multiple young women. Ted Bundy confessed to killing 30 people, but the police only were able to confirm only about 20. Different characteristics about people who become serial killers. Professor Hickey discusses that gender, poverty, ethnicity are crucial in how many different types of serial killers happen to develop over time. Most serial killers have terrible upbringings or struggle in some way. Usually, if someone doesn't have a horrible upbringing, they are less likely to become a serial killer. People who become serial killers can develop many different mental disorders, uh, multiple personality disorders, mental disorders. Some children who are sexually assaulted become sex offenders due to the traumatic experience that they went through that will stay there for the rest of their lives. A group of two or more serial killers always has a person who initiates a more sadistic person and is more dominant than the other one that's involved. Do serial killers have empathy? Some serial murderers eventually lose all their empathy. There's no on and off switch to shut off empathy, but it is a long process over time. And once a person loses their empathy for anything, like for their victims or anything like that, they can't be empathetic anymore. Serial killers who try to fake being empathetic in courtrooms are just trying to fit in and are bad at faking empathy because they don't know what it feels like and will never know it because it develops into a mental disorder in your head for life. All you need to take good care of your own well-being before it's too late. Why did I pick the presentation about serial killers? I was actually I was actually the first one on the list to pick a topic out of everyone. I chose this topic because I'm really into crime, true crime documentaries and forensic analysis and all their complexities further understand uh, the outside mind uh, internally and experience it personally, but be able to understand the mind of a serial killer and the psychological characteristics of how a serial killer's mind functions, or on how it doesn't function as a brain should. Uh, what I found interesting, but a bit surprising as well, was from the podcast that was a fact that Professor Hickey mentioned, once you lose all empathy for things, you can never get it back, and that's why serial killers have a hard time feeling remorse for the victims, and have a hard time having judges, jurors, or general public of showing remorse to try to be empathetic and fail at it because they don't know exactly what they're exposed to. Or supposed to feel because there is a chemical imbalance, past trauma, or violence. Can you be born evil or is evil made? The serial killer genes. Professor Hickey didn't speak a lot about the genes that serial killers share. He focused more on race, religion, and outer physical characteristics rather than the mental or genetic disorders of serial killers. But he asks in the podcast, is evil born or is it made? He believes that it's just possible to be made after birth, and I believe it to be possible that there's one more than one way to be evil. For example, twins vanishing syndrome in the womb, when one twin consumes the other. Uh, that baby wasn't born yet, so I mean, an evil act like that, I mean, can be, you can see as kind of like an evilish act in a way. And then it gets to be born, and considering that if that person has that gene, the serial killer gene, the MAOGA gene, and the CDH13 gene that's found in most serial killers, the MAO gene is controlling the dopamine and serotonin in the brain. The CDH13 has previously associated with substances and abuse, with ADHD when you have a deficiency in the enzyme. Uh, Thanks for watching. The info from there will be helpful to better understand the complexities of the mind. Thank you.